Hey friends, and welcome to today's video. My next book review. So you can guess it, we're talking baseball today. This is the first baseball biography I've ever read, like a full book. It's not an autobiography, it's a story someone wrote. And yes, of course, we're talking about Clemente. Roberto Clemente, and the official title is Clemente, the Passion and Grace of Baseball's Last Hero. Clemente, the Passion and Grace of Baseball's Last Hero. By David Maraniss. So this is pretty long, very well researched, very thorough. I mean, this guy has a bibliography, which also includes tons of interview references and magazine articles, of course, some internet research. But this was a little bit before the internet was so rich. 2005, I think, or 6 he published. Anyway, 350 plus pages, so about 350. Okay, so let's get into it. So here you have Clemente, the Pirates. His whole career was on the Pirates. And of course, he's from Puerto Rico. Here you have him with family, saluting the people. I tried to kind of capture a couple of different images of him. If you don't include the family and the Puerto Rico aspect, you're definitely not going to understand him. So it's very, very key to who he is. So I'm writing my own autobiography for a good 4 years now plus, and I love reading other autobiographies and biographies to for reference, but also to enrich myself in terms of what history is and just, enrich of my interest. So baseball is an interest of mine, not something I actively play or follow, but it's still some sort of like passion lurking in my history. It's also connected to the history of the US, and baseball is also connected to the history of other countries, such as Puerto Rico. And for me, learning about Puerto Rico is something I never really dug into. And Puerto Rico, I have family members who are half Puerto Rican. I dated a girl who's Puerto Rican. I had co-leaders in Buddhist practice who are Puerto Rican, and members that I, encountered the culture there. And Puerto Rico has some similar cultures to other Central American countries where I have friends. Some similarities there, crossover, of course. But also, it is part of America, but it's not a state. So it has this interesting relationship with America, which is worth noting. They don't speak English, is not the primary language. So I never really learned about what's the difference between Puerto Rico and Cuba. To a typical, American brain, I'm sure we can't clearly tell you much detail. But I knew a bit more because I like history and stuff like that, and I like to listen to people when they talk to me. But learning about Puerto Rican history in this book helped me to appreciate that living in New York City, Puerto Ricans are a significant part of the population, I would say. So it's good to know about them, their culture, and why Clemente is so prized to Puerto Rican people, and of course Americans too. It took him a while to feel. This is all stuff I learned through the book and through, of course, the book inspired me to watch some biography videos on him and stuff. So what can I say? Well, let me talk about the book. The writing is, writing a biography as opposed to an autobiography is a very different animal, even though it's similar. because in autobiography, it's like, this is my life. I'm taking full responsibility of telling my story. Biography, the authors has to consider so many different factors. Are they going to be perceived authentically? Or are the family members going to be okay with it? Or all his friends, but you have to think about other people's feelings and perceptions. You don't want to like do anyone wrong, but at the same time, you want to tell the honest story of a person. So, for example, if Clemente has faults that the author wants to share, which he does, of course, how do you do that in a way that doesn't offend his fans and particularly his wife and kids, and his mother and father? I don't know when they passed, but you see him with his dad, Melchor, I think that's how you pronounce it, Melchor, and mom, I forget her name. And yes, this guy came, I won't say came from nothing. I don't know what that means, but definitely came from a materialistically simple life, without much materialistic abundance. And but he did come from a very loving, fun, I'd say to some degree free family. His mother and father worked very much every day, it seems. So not free in the sense that they could just go wherever they wanted, but kind of some degree of free-spiritedness. He wasn't taught racism or anything like that. So when he got to the States and started practicing in the first, minor league teams, the farm league he was originally drafted for the New York Dodgers. Now that would have been a different history. And the Dodgers kind of ignored him and hid him. And then all of a sudden, the Pirates, when he was ready to be like bought as a player or whatever that process is, the Pirates put in a bid for him and he accepted, and he went to Pittsburgh. And then he was just like this kind of Pittsburgh guy. And then, in the spring training, they would be down in Florida, and he experienced a lot of racism and weirdness there. And we're talking about the mid-50s into the 60s. And he helped fight to change that. He really was a key element, and speaking up for people of color, because he was in this weird position where he looks black, right, dark-skinned guy, but he never did not identify with Black Americans, African Americans, because that wasn't who he was. It wasn't his culture at all. He was a Puerto Rican, and yes, a dark Puerto Rican, but from what I gather, it seemed like the white and black thing in Puerto Rico was not such a big deal. When he got to the States, he was shocked at how big a deal it was. Like, there's no separate eating and stuff like that in Puerto Rico. So, so here he was. Speaks Spanish. He's in Pittsburgh, this very white, blue-collar, hardworking town, and he can't relate with the language. He looks to the average person like a black guy, and so they treat him differently because of that. And then he feels, of course, not understood as a Puerto Rican or Hispanic guy. So he felt very alone for a good part of his life, and as a professional athlete, because he was neither this nor that. So he would find people who he could trust with his limited language, or maybe they spoke Spanish, and he would hook on to those people, and those would be his people, But mainly the fans were his, of course, family, but baseball fans and his supporters he was really dedicated to. He felt like without them, there would really be no point in continuing to play. So, so his story is very interesting. He's a very proud guy. I guess in the best of ways, like, how could you become one of the best players of all time without pride? Certainly he had a passion, and it says grace. And I would agree from learning his character. He was a graceful player, watching him play and hearing about him, but also he did conduct himself in a very respectable manner. Some people say when he walked into a room, it felt like the president walked in, or the king maybe, something like that. Not that I don't think he did it with arrogance from what I gather, but he just had this air of somebody important. And it came from his pride in the people of Puerto Rico, being a Puerto Rican person. Somewhere along the line, he got the sense that I am a spokesperson for people without a voice, for Puerto Ricans, for other, perhaps Latin American communities. Yeah, because he became connected to Nicaragua and played baseball there on the winter season and stuff, and met the kids and stuff there. So he felt the people without a voice, the hardworking people, the everyday people, he would give them his time freely. When he became famous, at the time he was really famous and kind of a living legend, he would run into an old man walking down the street with a bunch of canes, sugar canes, and the guy would say hi, and they would talk for 20 minutes. He wasn't afraid to talk to people, but ordinary people. When it came to like important people, he was a little more hesitant, or like notable, famous people, and especially the press. He didn't like the press very much, in the sense that he felt he was misrepresented. Maybe it had to do with his lack of understanding English for a little bit, but also they would use they would like quote him with his phonetic speech. So the way he spoke in the Puerto Rican accent, they would like put it into words, which I actually like, because it does kind of tell you more about a person's character. But he took offense to that, and sometimes I'm sure it wasn't always well-meaning. But eventually a lot of reporters and stuff grew to really respect him. And then eventually he was willing to own up to his mistakes, which some news journalists, I say reporter, I mean like sports journalists, they really appreciated that he would apologize if he did something wrong, said something wrong, but he was he could blow up at any moment, certainly around news reporters. I don't know if he was explosive to everyone around him. I don't think so. But he was kind of temperamental and kind of fragile, all while being super strong athlete and very proud and strong-minded. Great body, incredible physique, looked like a Greek statue, they said. But at the same time, he also was very honest about his body and would say his back hurts, his arm hurts, and ask for days off or take days off. So he got this reputation for being a bit of a crybaby, or I don't know what, there's like some term for it. Yet he was still have incredible batting averages and fielding averages, and what are you talking about? Like some of the best ever. His athleticism was beyond, and it was like he was willing to punish his body to be the greatest. And he was very frustrated for a long time, wasn't recognized as an MVP. Felt he was overlooked for white players who were more run-of-the-mill, mediocre, but because they were white and accessible to the fan base, or more relatable, people would vote for them. He didn't necessarily dislike any of those white players, but he just felt this injustice around, who gets called MVP, most valuable player, and who doesn't, and things like that. With the way he was with the woman he married, he could have had any girl type of guy, really handsome and attractive, famous. So of course he had, relationships with many girls. But then when he met this one, Vera, he just fell in love and had to have her, and was very pushy about it, but very respectful as well, and met the father, and very early on he was determined to marry her. And it's a fun drama, a fun like romantic drama between the two of them, because I guess you get the sense that he knew his time was short, and this was the woman he was going to marry, and he just wanted to do it. And because also, whenever he was in Puerto Rico, the time was limited because he would have to ship back to the States for the baseball season. So he just wanted to take action as quick as possible whenever he was there. And he always had, as he got older and more famous, he had many more engagements, because he was like, everyone wanted to have a meeting or in his honor. He was the guest of honor and all that stuff. And later on, it got even more convoluted. He won 2 World Series. He was part of a World Series winning team twice on Pirates, 1960 and 1971. Was it? 71 or 72. 71, I think it was. One of those. 72, I guess. Yes. I don't remember. But yeah, he died on New Year's Eve, 1972. And it was shortly after hitting his 3,000th hit, which was his last hit. So he, or maybe 3,001. So I think it was 3,000th hit. So he made that milestone. This guy, man, great player. Fun to learn about. So there were a bunch of books on baseball players that I put in my, my cart online on the store that I use, which is thriftbooks.com. Cool store. I like buying used books. This is the only way for me, unless I absolutely can't buy a used one and I want it bad. I had, of course, Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, some of the greats, Hank Aaron, which I did actually buy the Hank Aaron book, didn't read it yet. Henry Aaron. Jackie Robinson. I thought that story was important, but a little bit kind of too common. So I want something a little more flavorful. Of course, the white players, I want to know about them too, but I want something historically that felt important that I just really didn't know about. And for whatever reason, I picked Clemente, and I'm so glad I did. What a rich book. I was kind of intimidated. It looked long. I'm like, am I really going to get through this whole thing? What if, baseball, what if it gets too much into like history or politics? I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. That era, 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe I wouldn't be interested, but really well written. Very enjoyable. Good job, David Maraniss. So yeah, if you like Roberto Clemente, if you like Pirates or baseball in the baseball history, American history, if you want to see how Puerto Rico and baseball history come together, that's interesting. Also, there's Richard Nixon shows up for a bit because there was this big earthquake in Nicaragua, he was relaying help there, and maybe he's in a rush or whatever it was. He got in a plane that wasn't really ready to fly. He was just really determined to go with these supplies he had collected of aid, and he got on this plane that was not really fly-worthy, and it crashed, and he was gone. But there's a lot of, points of interest, like I said. American history, Puerto Rican history, baseball history, the man himself, Roberto Clemente. You get, touches of other popular people come in a little bit, not much. It's not like a celebrity fest in it by any means. But some popular names you'll definitely come across. Anyway, I highly recommend it. Rock on. Until next time, keep reading.